Because everything on the left intersects, because there's no individual causes for everything, we have this story. What if toxic masculinity is the real reason for climate change? Okay. They may bring up some good points in this piece about the behaviors of men and women in terms of short-term and long-term investment, and in terms of the care, harm, morality spectrum. But I'd like to point something out. When you assert the reason for something, toxic masculinity is the reason for climate change. Before we read any of this stuff, I just want to point out, we can then say, what's the reason for toxic masculinity? Is evolution the reason for climate change? You're going to blame the inherent behaviors of men, or you're going to blame the social upbringing of men. It all can be reduced and go down to something else. The point is, what causes climate change? Carbon emissions. Where do carbon emissions come from? Entirely up to debate. It is where they come from. However, whether or not the small amount that humans release has an impact on the climate is what conservatives and liberals are typically at arms over. Though most of the scientific community, the overwhelming majority, agree that climate change is the result of man-made actions, there are some who disagree. And it's an inherent challenge with understanding the truth in any circumstance. I, for one, think climate change is a serious problem, and I think the discussion needs to be had if we're going to try and figure out how we deal with the problem. Some people don't agree it exists. Okay, let me figure out what I can do for you so that you'll get something out of whatever it is we work out, right? That's how compromise works. Of course, you have the Green New Deal people saying the world is going to end, and they're waving their arms in the air. Calm down. But how do you get the left on board with climate change if the environment isn't their cause? Intersectional feminism. So I believe in honesty and integrity, which means if I'm going to have a conversation with someone about climate change, I'm going to explain the importance of environmentalism and why it'll be important to try and focus on some of these programs. However, the easy and cheap way to do it is to simply just tell people that toxic masculinity is the real reason the climate's changing. Now, don't you want to get involved? Of course they will. There was actually a protest in London, I think it was in London, where they claimed global warming was racist. Look it up. I swear to God, they were like protesting the airport. They said something that like global warming disproportionately affected marginalized communities. I don't know. But let's find out why toxic masculinity is the real reason behind climate change. When a person walks out of the grocery store holding an eco-friendly canvas bag instead of a plastic bag, what gender do you think they are? Most likely your unconscious bias answers that they are female. Whoa, 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 whoa. What if they're hydrogender? Or like, globogender? Why are you assuming female? I'm not. This is the type of answer Dr. Aaron Bro of the Utah State University is trying to get to the bottom of through his research. Oh, they mean biological sex. But I'm sorry, when it comes to toxic masculinity, those people don't believe in biological sex either. So I'm not quite sure what you're getting at, but let's read on. Wait a minute, how does any of this make sense? How could toxic masculinity be a thing if biological sex doesn't exist? It's like they just kind of hodgepodge a bunch of random ideas together and then just agree to say sure. And it's like, I imagine there's a Bible of sort, like a great book of their dogma, and it's just a bunch of duct-taped pieces of other books mashed together, and you're like, hey, that page and this page are different pages, but they're glued together. It's like, yeah, just read it. Bro co-authored a paper with professors from 4 other universities to understand how gender norms affect sustainable decision-making. They report data from 7 experiments that included over 2,000 participants from the US and China. What they found was remarkable. They found that both men and women associated doing something good for the environment with being more feminine. And when men's gender identity was threatened, they tried to reassert their masculinity through environmentally damaging choices. Look, I'm not questioning the research here, just the toxic masculinity interpretation. The report states that men may be motivated to avoid or even oppose green behaviors in order to safeguard their gender identity. This unearths a deeply held unconscious bias that Bro and team called the green feminine stereotype. I gotta say, that's actually a fair stereotype. I don't know if you've ever seen the Futurama episode where they're trying to save the penguins or whatever, and the feministas formed there was a group of feministas trying to fight for the environment and animal rights. Yeah. Once this unconscious bias is revealed, It has the potential to help society shift our increasingly precarious relationship with the environment for the better. If it remains hidden, it has the potential to greatly damage our environment permanently. Okay, all right, hold on. I have no problem with these findings of this data. I'm not an expert on this issue, so I'm going to defer to the universities. If you think that it is toxic masculinity which is driving these behaviors, then perhaps there is something we can come up with, some kind of solution to where we can make it more masculine to actually save the environment or something like that, right? Unfortunately, the humanities and colleges don't believe in biological sex and gender identity. It's all contradictory. So I guess we're just doomed. Because how do you solve a problem pertaining to gender identity when they believe in multiple genders and they don't believe biological sex is real? In which case, what determines whether or not someone is actually going to want to assert their gender identity? In one of Bro and team's experiments, both men and women were asked to recall a time when they did something good or bad for the environment. Those who recalled having done something good for the environment rated themselves as more feminine than those who recalled having done something bad to the environment. One might expect this type of gender stereotyping around green behavior to happen only when someone is concerned about how they appear to others. But even upon self-evaluation, judge themselves feminine when acting responsibly towards the environment. This experiment shows how deeply held this bias is. Which brings me to another interesting argument, which I haven't explored very much, but there's a discussion around what happens to a society as women gain more rights. If it is true, the data says that there is nation-level average differences between men and women in terms of their morality. I did a story on this for our Subverse channel, talking about how women are more concerned with the care-harm moral. There's like 5 moralities or something, and care-harm is one. Men are less concerned about care-harm. Women are more concerned. Therefore, over time, as women become equally represented in society, the society will start to adapt to caring and avoiding harm. And this may be why we're seeing intersectional feminism, this idea that you can protect everyone from everything. I guess it pertains to, evolutionary psychology, which, I'm not an expert in, but we may have something coming up with some evolutionary psychologists that's about, essentially through evolution, women were more interested in protecting the tribe and taking care of the families and the children, while men were taking risks. Thus, you have these two internal biological factors. Not saying that is or isn't true because I'm not a scientist, but cue the debate from the, social constructivists, I think it's called. But anyway, the idea is, if women are more about the environment, then maybe the reason we're seeing concern over climate change reach this level is because we have more women voting. So politicians then see that, and it's reflected in policy. The same thing is true with feminism and banning hate speech. Men care much less about whether or not you're mean. Women are more likely to care if you're mean. I'm just saying, hypothetically, then you'll see these changes. Another experiment took the idea further and applied the concept of the green feminine stereotype to product and brand selection. Male participants were exposed to one of 2 Walmart gift cards. One that used more comically feminine design elements like pink and floral, selected to threaten masculine stereotypes. What? Or another gift card that was designed to not threaten masculinity. Why would pink and floral threaten masculinity? I don't get it. That's not a threat to masculinity. A threat would be like if it said men are dumb or, masculinity is bad or toxic masculinity. Flowers and pink, that's just not. I would imagine that the reason a man would be less likely to choose that is not because their masculinity is threatened, but because they choose to take what they more identify with, right? So it's not a negative thing. It's like, oh, there's 2 things. One represents me and one doesn't. I'll take the thing that kind of represents me. It's kind of like when choosing your favorite color car. Am I going to pick a pink, hot pink, Dodge Neon? No, I'll probably just pick blue or black because I just prefer to have a dark color. It's just, does that mean anything? The men were then asked to make a series of choices between green and non-green products to purchase. Men who were shown the gender threat gift card chose more non-green products than men shown the other gift card. That means that when men felt emasculated, no, it didn't. They asserted their masculinity and safeguarded their gender by making choices that would ultimately harm the environment. Bull effing. Okay, you know what? You lost me. That's not. Listen, if you present a man 2 different cards, one's got flowers and one's got footballs, the person who chooses the football one might not be threatened, and the reason they may be more likely to buy environment-damaging products is because they didn't care in the first place, not because you threatened their masculinity. So what they're trying to claim with this, it's very reaching in my opinion, is that because they threatened a man's masculinity, he decided to screw with the environment. Or it's possible that men who don't care about the environment are more likely to choose the one particular gift card, right? The men who were shown the gender threat gift card chose more non-green products than men shown the other gift card. It doesn't, look, one of the problems a lot with scientific studies is we honestly have no idea what that means. Could it be that, I'll say this, did you know that men who are shown pink things are more likely to damage the environment? Because I could draw that conclusion too. Men that are offered 2 gift cards are more likely to damage the environment. Why their conclusion is that simply because pink and floral is their perceived thing of a masculine threat, it resulted in environmentally damaging behavior, seems absurd. I didn't read the study. This is coming from a Forbes article, which probably interpreted the study. But I think it's fair to point out, actually, let's end by what Bro says. He sums it up nicely. We need to overcome our unhealthy judgments and gender incongruence, and men need to be confident in their self-identity and decide to live a sustainable lifestyle without caring what other people think. Let's begin the conversation to start overriding our natural judgments. Our future depends on it. Yes, I don't entirely disagree with that, but I just think it's kind of a weird framing of things. I got an idea. How about we just be more environmentally conscious, whatever. I got more videos coming up in a few minutes. Stick around. I will see you in a few minutes.